So I finished 1984 over the weekend. At the time of this recording anyway, like a day ago. And I remember back when, 2016, when Trump won the election, I was on Twitter and I was SJW adjacent. I'm left leaning or I'm left wing. So I followed a lot of SJWs. And even then I had some issues with them. But I remember, people were like, oh, 1984. That's the book everybody needs to read now that Trump has become president. This is the world we're going to have to live in. And, I've been aware of 1984 for forever. And I just now, like I said, finished it a couple of days ago. And the thing is, 1984, it's so familiar. Just, you pick it up from osmosis. I knew about Newspeak and Big Brother's watching you, all that stuff. David Bowie's Diamond Dogs is partly about 1984. Alan Moore, he wrote V for Vendetta, which is, a lot like 1984. He even does a pastiche of 1984 in A League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, The Black Dossier. Grant Morrison in Invisibles is heavily influenced by 1984 and refers to it a lot and does a lot of interesting things with it. The Prisoner show, there's all kinds of references to 1984 everywhere. It's permeated almost everything in like popular art and entertainment and political consciousness. It's just funny though. That's, it took so long for me to read it because it was like I was so familiar with it. Something that I noticed though about Newspeak, which I always thought was kind of interesting, on Twitter, all the SJWs, whenever they would complain about something, it sounded like Newspeak. And I even said, wait, this is Newspeak. I literally tweeted that a couple of times. I can't remember exactly. I know one of them might have been, a couple of times it was always about the meaning of words. So, of course, obviously, with Newspeak. But, I mean, something like SJWs have this insane need to define things in the most rigid terms and pretend that there's only one meaning to a word. So, like, blind playthrough. Oh, no, you can't call it a blind playthrough because that is diminishing what blind people have to go through in society. All of a sudden, they always want to change. If you call somebody fat, they say you can't use the word fat. Fat describes what you're talking about, but they still don't want you to use the word. They always want to come up with new terms, new phrases. And like I said, they always want to do this thing where they take, there's all kinds of things. I know that I think Lizzo had the word spaz in the song. And some random woman with some real medical disease, spasticata, whatever the name of the disease was, wrote this diatribe against Lizzo, basically saying when you use the word spaz, you're talking about me. And it's like, nobody's talking about you, lady. You got your own problems. Just deal with your condition. Spaz doesn't just refer to whatever the heck you're talking about. Like, no one in the history of the world, when they say spaz, is thinking about somebody with a real condition. They're literally talking about somebody who's acting like a goofball and a weirdo. And words can have different meanings. Yeah, so I already knew with Newspeak that it sounded more like SJWs than it did like right-wing people. And then, you'll hear conservatives say stuff like, it's thought crime a lot. So anyway, as I'm reading it, I finally read the book and I'm like, the party, INGSOC, the people who are in control of everything, the people who, Winston is inwardly rebelling against and, who he works for, doing things like changing the history of events and making up false people who were heroes in a war that constantly changes the enemy. So, sometimes the war says, sometimes people say that INGSOC and Oceania, the citizens are at war against East Asia. And then a month or two later, they'll say, we're at war against Eurasia and East Asia is our allies. And they'll just change the history to reflect their new enemy. And it was just interesting to me, the slogans. So as I'm reading it and I see the slogans for the party, what is it? Freedom is slavery. War is peace. Ignorance is strength. This is why I did that video like a week or so ago where I added new party slogans, because war is peace sounds like trans women are women. It sounds like the disabled do not need to be cured. Dieting is fat phobia. The inherent contradiction of the phrases that SJWs try to push down everyone's throat these days is textbook Newspeak. Everything, I did another video with 1984 because I was so impressed with it. I thought I knew what 1984 was about. But when I actually read it, I was like, okay, so these people were like, you got to read 1984 now that Trump is president. This is the world we're started to live in. And it's like, no, 1984 is not about right-wing fascism. It's not about Trump's America. It's about left-wing totalitarianism. It's about SJWs taking over and changing the meaning of words, creating things to be angry about and to be offended by, taking away complexity of thought, having everybody agree about the same thing. And if you disagree slightly, you're the worst enemy. This constant need to destroy anybody who disagrees with you to the point where you hound them to the ends of the earth. And this pride of doing it. At least in 1984, people like O'Brien, one of the party members, one of the inner party members, one of the more upper echelon people who are in control of this government, recognize that essentially they're the bad guys. They're aware that when they try to destroy their enemies, they want to eradicate them completely, and that they build everything on hate. SJWs pretend that they build everything on love. So, and I've always said this about SJWs before I even read 1984. So I was saying this, I'm jumping around a lot. Every time I talk, So I was going to say, when I was talking about Newspeak, I did another video where I read a passage from 1984 relating to Newspeak and the fact that they will take classic literature, reduce the meaning of what the authors intended it, and then make it contradictory so it makes no sense. And you see that with these sensitivity readers and how they're going now to different classic books and to eliminate offense, as they say. They literally are changing the work and adding their own commentary to it. They're doing exactly what people like Syme and Winston are doing in 1984. And for these, it's amazing to me. I don't even see how anyone who's an SJW can read 1984 and pretend it's about Trump. But then again, I think, ironically enough, that's the whole point of being an SJW and being a left-wing totalitarian, in the sense that the whole point of Newspeak and the whole point of the way that the government party acts in 1984 is to hold two conflicting ideas. They're two separate conflicting ideas, but to hold them in your head and not really see that there's a problem with that. I forgot the exact quote. I have it somewhere. I think I used it in that other video I did, the one where I added the new slogans, because I would imagine an SJW who would read 1984 has to realize that war is peace and freedom is slavery has to sound like dieting is fat phobia. They have to recognize trans women are women. They have to recognize the inherent absurdity of these slogans, these things they keep, again, forcing down everyone's throat. And we're in a position now where, like, YouTube, TikTok, maybe even still Twitter to some extent, maybe Facebook too, where they, even though they're the establishment, they're the ones with all the power, they, instead of being on the side of sort of an objective neutrality and a recognition of reality, they support some of the most vile people on the planet. There was that woman on TikTok, Muslim woman, who was talking about this TikToker, Jeffrey Marsh, and how this Jeffrey Marsh person has a Patreon where he's encouraging kids to speak to him. He's basically saying, reject your parents. They don't understand what you're going through. Jeffrey Marsh is some gender neutral type person. I don't know if he's trans or what he is exactly. But I've seen him a lot on YouTube. People talk about him. He's just a strange looking individual. So I don't even want to say he's trans because he's doing that gender non-binary thing, which is just nonsense. Again, it's, gender is a spectrum. That's one of the slogans that the party would have in 1984. So anyway, this person is talking, doing that thing where they like basically grooming, You take children away from their parents and you act like you're the only person who understands them and love them and kind of separate them from a more stable support group so that you could just push whatever ideas, weird ideas you have and have them lived it out with you or whatever. So it's only probably a few people, but that Muslim woman who pointed out how he was targeting children because his supporters and he himself said he wasn't targeting children. But then all you have to do is look at a bunch of his TikTok videos where he's saying, I'm talking to you kids, hello kids, blah, blah, blah. And he went on a deleting spree, apparently, to delete a lot of those videos. Still, even though it's demonstrable that this person was targeting children with a lot of his rhetoric and whatever, people still went after this Muslim woman. They vandalized her car. Apparently, they sent her an email where they told her that they knew her schedule, they knew her child's schedule, they threatened her, they posted pictures of, because she's a Muslim, so they posted pictures without her kima or hijab, and that's a big no for Muslim women to be seen in public without their hijabs. I don't think it's a big deal, but then again, I'm not Muslim, so whatever. But she was crying about it, she was upset about it, and she apologized, she deleted all her videos, and it's a shame to see this woman who was really funny, and she pointed out exactly what the issue was with this Jeffrey Mars person. But it's real life. Like she said, I'm just one woman, I'm just one person by myself. I've been attacked, I've been threatened, and I don't want to go through this anymore. I'm done with this fight. I just pointed something out, and I guess she would think it's so obvious that there's something wrong with this person talking this way and speaking to children about this nonsense. And I guess she figured most people just accept it. But no, again, there's this very small group of just really hateful people who are as vicious as INGSOC is. Again, INGSOC's the government of 1984. So they're extremely vicious people who will do anything and everything to destroy their political enemies. They will openly lie. They will create contradictory statements. They will torture you. They will do everything to stop you from just viewing reality as it should be. There's a whole thing, and if you haven't read 1984, I highly recommend it. But there's the whole thing about at a certain point when Winston is being tortured, and this, spoilers talk. And I knew a lot of this was happening, because like I said, I pretty much, it took me so long to actually read 1984, because I was so familiar with it. But reading it, you get the power of Orwell's prose and diction. He's very entertaining read. And then also you just kind of see how everything unfolds. He just lays everything out. But anyway, so there are moments when Winston is being tortured. They want to, because he's against Big Brother. Inwardly was against Big Brother. Some things happened and he got caught. And so now he's been brought to the place where he knew inevitably he was going to go be found out and be tortured to make confessions of things that he never did. But literally, guy's holding up 4 fingers and he's saying, how many fingers am I holding up? And Winston's like, you're holding up 4 fingers. And the guy's like, no, I'm holding up 5 fingers. And every time he would say, no, I see 4, he would get just immense pain just shot through his body, like electric shock through his body. And he kept insisting, you are holding up 4 fingers. And then even if he said 5, they knew what he was thinking. So he goes, no, you're telling me that you see 5, but you still see 4. I need you to believe that you see 5. I don't need you to just say, yeah, okay, fine, so you can stop torturing me. I will say 5, but of course you and I both know it's 4. The whole Galileo thing where he's like, all right, they was torturing his ass. They was whooping Galileo's ass. About, what was it? I think we just talked about, the Earth orbiting around the sun. And they was whooping his ass about, you better recant this, because the Earth is the center of the universe and it doesn't revolve around the sun. The sun revolves around the Earth. Something like that. I think that's what it was. But they was whooping Galileo's ass, and Galileo finally said, okay, fine. You know what? I recant everything I said, about whatever the fuck I was talking about. Fine. Because I'm tired of y'all whooping my ass. And then when they let him go, he's mumbling on his way out the door. Nevertheless, it does move shit. It does rotate around the sun. He's talking shit. So, INGSOC, the party, is like, we're not going to have no Galileo bullshit. When we say, even though I'm holding up 4 fingers, and I tell you it's 5, you better believe it's 5. You can't just say, yeah, sure, whatever. You got to say it. So that was the whole thing where, with the trans women or women thing, it is not enough for trans activists to be accepted as trans. They are now insisting that they are actually women. And it's not, I think at this point, for them, it's enough for people to just shut up and go, okay, yes, you're a woman. Nobody believes that trans women are women. Trans women don't believe they're women. That's the whole point of being trans. Yet somehow we've created this environment. YouTube, and I know I'm been shadow banned. I'm sorry, but I know I have been. I look at people like Night Talk. Odin's Men was demonetized for talking about trans issues. And I don't understand the need to give these activists all this unnecessary power. They've already gotten to a point where we all recognize that attacking trans people for being trans is wrong. I don't understand why we now are supposed to live in a society where non-binary and this gender obsession is being pushed down everybody's throats if you're online. I don't understand the need for YouTube to stop people from saying, I don't have a problem with trans people. I just have a problem with activists telling us that they're exactly what they say they are. I have a problem with society trying to pretend that you can't define what a woman is. And again, that's another thing about Newspeak. These stupid gender neutral and inclusion and diversity terms. Things like chest feeder. That's Newspeak. Like my thing, and I've said this before. I said this on Twitter years ago. Why are you making these gender neutral terms? All you have to do, if a trans woman wants to be considered a woman, they will just, when you say woman, a trans woman should just automatically accept or assume that they're a part of that. Now, of course, in social situations, if a trans woman wants to date a straight man, it's not going to happen. But I don't see the need to go, I got to make a trans woman feel better by calling actual women with breasts chest feeders. Because now women are reduced to their body parts in a motherly function where some women don't want to have children. And this need to make up fake terms and pretend it's about including more people and being diverse when it's not. It's extremely rigid. It's extremely reductive. But again, YouTube supports it. Twitter supported it for the longest time. I don't know what's going on with Musk there. Twitter's still awful. But I don't know, at least people are maybe not being as muzzled who are opposed to this stuff as they were when, the party was in charge of Twitter. So whatever. But I think I realize there were people, SJWs, who kept insisting that no, Orwell was not criticizing socialism when he wrote 1984. He's a socialist. Look it up. And they would point other stories he wrote or, memoirs or whatever, things that he wrote. I hadn't read 1984 at that point, so I didn't quite realize. I was thinking, okay, so 1984 is about fascism. It's about the right wing stamping on the boots, stamping a boot on the human face forever. But when you read it, it doesn't matter if George Orwell, the socialist, he is still criticizing the left wing and the left with 1984. I'm on the left. I pretty much spend all my time criticizing SJWs and the online left now because they're doing the things that they accuse the other side of doing. And they're more efficient with it and they're more cruel about it because on the one hand, they pretend that they're for everybody and they want inclusion and diversity. But on the other hand, they will stamp on any woman who's concerned about being a woman and what it means to be a woman and their own unique experience of being a woman. Like a man with gender dysphoria is never going to know what it's like to be a woman. Even the way in which society relates to a trans woman is different than the way they relate to women, period. Medically, biologically, all kinds of things. And yet now we have to put up with the society where you have YouTube, this huge corporation, stamping on people's voices simply for disagreeing with this absurd, over-the-top, unreasonable side of, trans issues. And then, at a certain point, it's really cynical. It's not about really stopping hate speech. There's a big thing in 1984 that the powers that be want to maintain the hierarchy. We have everything we need to create equality up to a point. Like people would have their basic needs met and everybody can live where they're on pretty much the same level. You'll have individuals who achieve more and obtain more based on talent and competence and everything. But still, there was a kind of a point where no one can go lower. But the people who are in charge of the hierarchy want to maintain that hierarchy. So they constantly push war. These days, I think what it is pushing gender obsession and inclusion and diversity, because it's so surface, it's so meaningless, it's so without real thought that it can't be serious. It can't be well-intentioned. It can't really be about protecting people from hate speech, because saying a man can't become a woman is not hate speech. It's just simple. And the main reason people react against this whole thing is that it's like, this is absurd. Like, what kind of world are we living in when an absurd person can say, I'm really a woman and I don't understand why you don't want to have sex with me if you're a straight man. I said I'm a woman. I identify as a woman. Why is no one sleeping with me? And a man can't just simply say, well, I'm straight. You're still male to me. Like, you have your own gender dysphoria, your own whatever internal system that says I actually am a woman. But that's not enough for me. I can't link with your brain in that way, where I'm going to overlook all the physical differences between an actual biological male and an actual biological female just to validate you. And where do we go from treat you with respect, dignity, blah, 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 to validate me, worship me, bend reality in my favor? Like, why do we all have to share this mental illness? And that's why I say, like, YouTube, I see how things go. You know, I have my original YouTube channel, which is separate from this channel, and I'm subscribed to it, of course. And my channel, this channel, is no longer on the list of subscribers. Like, it just doesn't show up there at all. So I know that there's shadow banning going on, and I know that they want to cut certain people out of the knee. I know my first video, which was about Last of Us. I've talked about this before. Last of Us, Neil Druckmann, and, you know, gamers, streamers reacting to Joel getting killed and stuff like that. That started out the gate really big. And then all of a sudden, the comments on the video started disappearing. You know, people were saying, you know, insulting the game and saying how bad it was and saying Neil Druckmann really, you know, dropped the ball. All those comments were getting wiped out. And then all of a sudden, the views just stopped. Dead stop. You know, they never went beyond that. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense. So whatever, I'm not even complaining about like, oh, he's stopping me. I never expected to make money or anything on YouTube. I like expressing myself and just getting things off my chest. It just bothers me to see that the people who pretend that they are the victims, the people who act like, oh, you know, we're being harmed and we're being destroyed in the streets, can get away with being completely unreasonable, completely hateful. They can make up insane newspeak, and YouTube will support them. Facebook will support them. Patreon will take your money away from you if you get money from them if they don't like what you say about something. And everybody's just supposed to accept it. Everybody's supposed to just be like, oh yeah, you know, somebody whining about their pronouns is a great harm to society. Like, society is crumbling because someone who's clearly a girl is crying in her car because people keep misgendering her. You know, it's insane. I just think it's hilarious that all the people who was like, 1984 is Trump's America and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, it's not. It's not Trump's America. It's you guys. It's SJWs. It's this woke bullshit that has nothing to do with actually helping people. It's its own form of fascism. It's totalitarianism. It's keeping people under the thumb of hive mind, where everybody's supposed to think the same. There's not supposed to be any complexity of thought, you know, nuance. You know, one word's supposed to mean one thing, and that's it. The opposite of a thing is the thing. And if you point out the contradiction in that, in whatever statement it is, you're the bad guy, you're evil, and you need to be suppressed. Oh yeah, okay, so that's what I was going to say. Like I said, I'm bouncing around all over the place, but this is going longer than I thought. But there was another thing that stuck out to me recently. They were talking about how, like I said, for the longest time, online talked about 1984 as it's being about Trump's America, and right-wing fascism. And even though I thought something was wrong with that because of Newspeak, I just accepted it. So anyway, whatever. So I start reading 1984 and I'm starting to think, no, the party is not right-wing, guys. The party is SJWs and online left. It's people like Hassan and Vash and was it Noel Sampson and FD signifiers, people like that. That's being represented in 1984. These are the people who make up the party. So that's interesting. And that was why I recorded a couple of the videos, put out a couple of videos that I did, reading from it and then adding party slogans or whatever. So anyway, I saw some YouTubers talking about some report. I don't even know. I didn't follow up on it too much, where they were saying basically, hey, these are the type of books that will radicalize people to the right. And most people focused on Lord of the Rings, but it was like Lord of the Rings, 1984, some other books. And so most people, because they're geeks, geek channels and stuff, talked about Lord of the Rings. But what stood out to me was 1984. And I'm like, okay, so somebody realizes that 1984 isn't about right-wing fascism, that it's clearly about the left. It's clearly about, totalitarianism from the left. It's about all the worst things about these like online lefties who everything, like I keep saying, everything is reduced to one meaning, the most rigid terms for things. It's about ignoring science. Like there was one big, really fucked up line in 1984 where they say, there is no word for science in Newspeak. These same people who used to love science so much just a few years ago, now when it comes to talking about trans women, and again, it's mostly about the women, not the men. Now all of a sudden, biology doesn't mean anything. Or they try to twist it to include intersex people to say, well, you see, gender is non-binary because some people are intersex. And it's like, leave intersex people out of it. That's not what's going on with trans people, especially trans women. So yeah, all these people who praise 1984 as a book against right-wing fascism hasn't read the book, or they're doing Newspeak. And they're doing doublethink, where they're pretending it's about right-wing fascism, knowing what it's really about, but not accepting it. Crazy fucking world we live in now. And like I said, the powers that be must want it to be this way to maintain like our focus on things other than what's important in life. Like the real inequality that's going on in life. Things that our technology could fix with almost a snap of the fingers. But to maintain the same old, they put this BS in our face. And then when anybody try to step back and say, hold on, this is not what we should be focusing on. This doesn't make sense. This isn't rational. You've gotten to a point now where everybody understands and knows fundamentally, don't hurt trans people. If people are hurting trans people, they know what they're doing is wrong. And the system's not on their side. But now you're starting to say, we have to believe someone who self-IDs themselves, somebody who's not a scientist, a biologist, or anything. We just have to believe them when they say they're women. And you see these TikToks of like women being attacked by biological males for not liking the fact that what it means to be a woman has been diluted and you like watered down to include men who, for one reason or another, want to be women. And no other situation in life is someone wanting to be something validated as that thing. If somebody says, I identify as tall, even though I'm short, nobody's going to say, yeah, you're right, you're tall. They're just going to go, no, you're short, dude. Sorry. But when a male says, I'm a woman, everybody goes, that's right, you're a woman. Even the dictionary got changed. We're living in 1984. Absolutely. And it's not Trump's America.
Come see, remember.